on soil application of biochar based on the work that we did in our research group. And the market, the challenge is how do we get them in sustainable ways with minimum environmental impact. That's the challenge. And so far as energy is concerned, there are many solutions. We can improve the efficiency in existing technologies. We can go from fossil fuels to renewables. We can go for low carbon negative emission technology, or we can do carbon capture and storage. Then doesn't matter whether we use fossil fuel or renewables. If we can capture CO2 and put it to storage and use, then it's fine. So here, but what makes bioenergy different from other renewable energy sources is solar, wind, hydro, geothermal. They can satisfy our energy requirement. But biomass is the only thing, only renewable resource which can satisfy both energy as well as material requirement. Because there are many things, many materials which can be made from biomass, like furniture, plastics, bioplastics, biopolymers, biocomposites. So on the material side, we can replace many things from biomass, which makes it a very unique renewable resource. Also, unlike other renewable energy sources, biomass offers the benefit of like biogenic carbon, and then storing, we are talking about biochar, so storing that part of biogenic carbon again back into the ground for a long time. So that's what like motivated me to work in this area of biomass and choose this particular energy. I'm a chemical engineer by background, and my PhD was on chemical looping, where I produced ammonia, nitric acid and ammonium nitrate. But after my PhD, I started working in this area of biomass and biochar, particularly on gasification, pyrolysis and torrefaction. And since last 4 years, we have been working on using this biochar for wastewater treatment and soil amendment. So the work which I am going to present is primarily done by my PhD student, Abdul. So he is also here, so please feel free to interact with him in the lunch break or tea break about the findings. So since first I will talk about the biochar market. So in market, there are many stakeholders involved, like one who makes biochar, one who sells it, one who applies it. So we did some market analysis based on the biochar producer. There are many stakeholders like distributor, buyer, and then the producer has to get into contact with who will provide them the feedstock, who will provide them the equipment, who will certify their process of production, who will certify their products and give them registrations, trademarks. There are all sort of different things, and if we pinpoint at any one of the stakeholders at the center, the whole market dynamics and ecosystem changes. But since we need biochar to evolve and get it more commercial and spread widely, we thought like let's do this study from the point of view of biochar producers. So they know why should they invest in it to make it and sell it into the market. So in this, we did the simple like diffusion model based market assessment and proposed a framework. The most important thing here is like as a researcher we keep on doing research and development and then develop things, and many times it happens that there is no one to buy it. So every time we do like research or pilot scale or batch production or a continuous commercial production, I think it's important to reassess the market every time at each stage. Because if R&D on biochar takes like say 5 years, maybe the market requirement changes. And even if you come up with something useful, there won't be anyone to buy. So obviously we start with need identification and preliminary market assessment, whether it's required or not. And then we go for any project or any work. So that market reassessment is the key which needs to be touched upon every time, like after completing each stage in that TRL channel. So what we did in 2020, this was for the study in United States. So we interacted with 20 biochar manufacturers and producers in California and asked them like, okay, the biochar is being talked about and there are many applications. So according to you, as well as some of these application experts, which of those applications are going to be the biggest one for biochar, or true one, or you think that you can make more profit? So almost everyone like agreed that the last three, the soil, if we put biochar for soil application, that currently has a more relatively more established market compared to other applications of biochar. There are diverse applications of biochar, but right now there is some consensus among some awareness of people and users regarding its application in soil. So, and in that also, mainly it's a home gardening and commercial agriculture. Commercial agriculture means someone who are making specialty crops, like wineries. So, like the product they make, it sells in a higher market like rate. So they can afford to put some expensive biochar, or they can afford to make some changes in their routine process of production. So these two were more. But then there comes mines and landfills. So when we extract, let's say example, coal mine. If we extract coal, now government has different ways to fill it. We are using fly ash, we use gravel, stones, and that abandoned mine, which is or the closed mines, which is reclaimed, it takes long years to make it fertile again as agricultural or a forest land. But just imagine if we start mixing biochar in all those things, that can speed up the process of making that land fertile again. Also, it will give a big market demand for big scale biochar producers through the government contracts or the mine owners. So, landfills. So, landfill also, because of leaching, underground water gets affected, and in those areas, if we put biochar, they can hold and retain those contaminants, immobilize those contaminants, and protecting our underground water from them. So these are the third one, even though it's less, but they are the applications where significantly high amount of biochar could be utilized at once. So and then the other question that we asked all these manufacturers, like what is the biggest concern or a barrier which is stopping you from expanding your facilities? Because most of them were in pilot scale stage or even commercial, like maybe 20 or 30 tons per day, and not like 100 or 200 tons per day. So they were very small plants. So obviously, like being in US, getting that capital investment was a big concern for most of these producers. But then overall, so customer perception and lack of market research were also one of the key concerns. And when I say lack of reliable R&D, it was not with respect to process of producing or applying biochar, but the like what Chloe pointed out, like we don't have these long-term studies proving that we can actually claim credits for like 100 years of storage or 1000 years of storage. Most of the studies are for 6 months and 1 year and 2 years. And I think we blame our academic system for it, because every professor wants big publications and students need to get their PhD also. So if we expect this from academicians to do like 10-year long study or a 20-year long study, it's going to be difficult. But I think the organizations like CSIR Labs or CRNS, like or INRAI or CIRAD, I think these organizations can really collaborate with academicians, with NGOs, and try to do this 10-year long studies at least to get this concrete information about it. Recently, we are going to start one similar experiment in our lab. It's a very simple experiment. Like we are going to dig like 1 feet, 2 feet, and 3 feet holes in the ground and put 1 bowl of biochar, the same quantity of biochar in those 3 grounds, and multiple replicates of it, and extract that biochar after every 1 year. And we are going to do this for 5 years, so that we have at least our own data for 5 years. From 5 years, we can at least project it to 100 years, not maybe 1000 years or more than that. So 5 years data, and it's a very simple experiment. We will just measure the organic carbon, fixed carbon, or ultimate carbon after end of every year. But then yeah, it will take some time, patience, and really some hard work, and multiple students will have to be involved in it. But yeah, so that's what we are planning. And the other part, like I said, like on technology, emissions, environmental aspects, they have no concern. Producers are like confident about it, that there won't be any environmental inquiry, or they don't really, these things really don't matter to them when it comes to marketing that biochar. So if I like categorize those factors, so market and scale up, they were the major barriers for commercializing this biochar. So this was about the market work that we did in US, and now I'll talk about some projects that we are doing in India with respect to biochar, or with respect to managing paddy straw or rice straw. So it was funded by DST, and here we use the process of oxidative torrefaction to make biochar. Torrefaction is not a preferred process to make biochar because it's at very low temperature, 200, 300. But since we did it in oxidative mode, at 300 degrees Celsius, it is possible to get purified biomass having properties similar to that of slow pyrolysis biochar. So I won't say all purified biomass are biochar, but some purified biomass which are produced at 300 degrees Celsius and more than 30 minutes of residence time, they achieve that H by C organic ratio of 0.7 and they can be called as biochar. So we converted the paddy straw into like say biochar and then mixed it with some nutrients and put it into the soil. The idea was having the small scale mobile fertilizer like production unit which goes from farm to farm, convert their residue into biochar there itself and then sell it through the fertilizer selling system which is already in place. So, and other application that we did was like co-firing application, but I will not talk about it, let's focus on the soil one. So we did, so this is some data on the, okay, you can see the one which is produced at 300 degree, it has almost 44% fixed carbon and 63% carbon on ultimate analysis, which makes it closer to the properties of slow pyrolysis biochar. And the benefit is like purification process is much easier and cheaper than a conventional pyrolysis. So this is the reactor that we have at Hydro and Renewable Energy Department at IIT Roorkee. During lab visits, you will see this reactor. And these are some pot scale studies that we did, where we studied the impact of mixing this biochar produced from oxidative torrefaction on soil. And results are similar to what Lodhi and like Mr. Sadashi from Bio showed, that when we tried, and these are some field trials which we did in a field near Sonal river of Roorkee. This we had to repeat twice because in lab, like you can see, we had this mosquito net to protect it from birds and like a controlled environment. But here it was beyond our control. So once when it rained heavily, the whole experiment was washed out and it took us another 4 months next year to get the same data replicated. So those are the issues with field trials and when you go in real field and try doing experiments. So what we found was, if we add just 1% of purified biomass or biochar in soil and reduce 25% fertilizer, we got the similar yield and growth as compared to the 100% fertilizer without biochar. And the amount of water reduction required for irrigation also reduced by 10% because of the increased water holding capacity of the soil because of biochar. So, and these are some DHA tests which shows with the increase in biochar content in soil, the pores or the breathing space for microbes increase. So the microbial activity increase with the increasing percentage of biochar, but then we don't need very high percentage rate of biochar if we are getting improved crop yield at a lower rate. So we try to keep it as low as possible. So 1% rate was enough. Then this study was for rice. Then we did a similar study for moong crop, where the results were similar. And then we did it for wheat crop. So for all three crops, we found this like the trade-off point for that particular soil. I am talking about one particular soil obtained from Haryana. So it falls into similar region, like of that 75%. If you add, you replace 25% fertilizer, add 1 or 2% biochar, and it will give similar yield because it improves the nutrient holding capacity, water holding capacity, and the availability of those nutrients and water to the roots of the plants. And these three crops, they are all like different in nature. Like moong crop is different, rice and wheat are like similar. And the overall finding was like, if we have a soil, obviously it depends on soil, rock, climate, but let's focus only on the process conditions and soil. So if we have like say, if you have acidic soil, then to increase its pH we will need alkaline effect. So we will prefer the biomass which has high ash, like paddy straw, and then we will prefer the severe process conditions. So we get more and more alkaline matter in it, it can increase the pH further. But if we have alkaline soil, then we will need biochar which has slightly acidic effect on it. So depending on the soil, crop and the requirement, we can choose the biomass as well as the process conditions. So another project which was completed, this was like a policy based theoretical project where we proposed did some calculations for a private forest. So in California they have private forest. There are public forests also, but private forest, like the owner is free to take decisions and they can implement any suggestion we give it to them. So the idea was again to have those mobile units. When the redwood timber was sold into the market, the slash or the forest residue which is generated because of thinning of forest and other forest management practices, that was the feedstock. And like here I'll show you in the next slide. So the biochar was proposed to be produced and applied in the same field at 2 to 9 tons per hectare. Like Roorkee said, anything above 10 tons per hectare doesn't really give benefit in terms of soil quality as well as in the crop yield. So 9 was the limit that we found with respect to that Californian soil. And the break even for this was very huge, like almost $200 to $400 per ton of CO2 saved. Nobody is going to give that high money for 1 ton of CO2. So it clearly shows like it's a very expensive way of doing that. So we tried to optimize the system, but even in the optimized case, the price was around $100 per ton. That is still a relatively high, very high, high price compared to the direct air capture, which is being looked upon as a standard to compare the CO2 credit price. So this was the area of the forest, and in any forest we don't cut all the trees at once. There may be some areas where you have clear cut, like entire trees cut. There may be some areas where you do just thinning. There may be some area where you have variable retention, or like part of the forest is cut, or only the trees beyond certain diameters are cut. So these are all forest management practices. But for any of those cuttings, there is a construction of temporary roads in that forest. So the idea was, once that timber harvesting is done, using the same pathways to take this mobile reactor to the site, the primary landing, secondary landing, and the sites where that forest residue is collected and stored, convert it into biochar and spread it in the area where there has been complete cut. Because once we have clear cut, it took 40 to 50 years for that region to grow. So one region will not be touched for 40 50 years. So these kind of forests are very good examples for like potential experimental sites if someone wants to do those experiments for 40 years. Because once that forest is clear cut, we can have biochar there in different places and keep visiting or checking the plant growth and soil quality for 40 years. And someone who is owning the forest, if they are our collaborator, like or from industry side or NGO side, they can help us do that. So these are some findings. So like I said here, the assumption was only 10% of the total slash. If we cover this much only, the break even was 100 for the optimized case. But the same system, if we look at with the Indian context, where the capital cost of the equipment and operating cost, mainly in terms of manpower, labor, is substantially lower, the price comes out to be 5 to 20, like 30% of that. So $30 per ton of CO2, which is still higher even today, because at present for biochar CO2 credit value varies from $5 to $25 per ton. And in India, I don't think if an Indian company has to buy, it will be less than $10 only. So the $30 per ton of CO2 is also a bigger cost for this approach. But again, so there are two ways to look at it. Either we can improvise policy, giving emphasis on climate change, raise the cost of biochar carbon credit value, or make our systems even better and economical to match that trade-off value. So yeah, so that was my talk so far, and this is from Dr. Shantanu's talk from IIT Bombay, who couldn't visit us. So he was going to talk about biochar carbon credit system. So like I said, there are different players, stakeholders involved in biochar ecosystem. So how does the process go? Like you produce biochar, apply it. Now with respect to credits, someone has to quantify and verify those credits. Then someone will issue those credits and register those credits. So this issuance and registration can be done by one organization. Once the credits are registered, once the quantified, verified or audited credits are registered, then there can be a trade or selling of those credits. And that can be done by some other organization. Once those credits are sold or traded, then they should not be resold again, because in this area like where we have biogenic carbon involved and system boundary are very difficult to separate, retirement of credits is very important and double counting of credits needs to be avoided. So who does that quantification? Obviously the biochar production and application, the project proposer, one who does it, they will do it. Quantification and verification can be done by independent technical consultants, or there are some companies which do that. BMB from Norway, HGS is a company started in France in 1878. Right now they are one of the like very well known like carbon credit quantifying. They provide carbon credit quantification and verification services all over the world, including like in India. And then for issuance and registration, there are some standards which needs to be followed, like whereas gold standard, carbon standard, then we have clean development mechanism and the UNFCCC. They issue this certified emission reductions, CERs. Okay. So this issuance and registrations can be done by organizations like that. Selling and trading, there are many carbon trading platforms existing in different parts of the world. For example, in India, we have this Indian Energy Exchange, then internationally we have Air Carbon Exchange, who looks after this sale and trade of credits. And there can be some third-party carbon credit management firms also, like some, like these are big names like Enking International, South Pole Group, SPG. They are doing that, those kind of activities. So that's how the overall carbon credit system looks like. And where do we stand in India? So before going to India, let me show the biochar potential. And before biochar potential, let's see this carbon credits. There are different ways to look at this carbon credit system. One is like ETS is like emissions trading system. CT is carbon trading. Then if you look at the different parts of the world, the emission trading system or like carbon trading or like carbon taxation, there are many countries which have got it like what to say, implemented. But if we look at carbon crediting mechanism, it's only in this Northern American part and some in China and some parts of Europe. In Australia, they have the carbon crediting mechanisms implemented, and the blue ones are under development. So in India, we don't see anything implemented or even scheduled. There are talks on carbon trading policy. The draft is ready. I think maybe when it comes for the first time, power industry would be the first one would be asked to abide by it or follow it, and biochar can come sometime later. But again, even the power industry, which is going to rely on that 5% and 7% co-firing, the biomass-based credits needs to be accounted for, and there should be some provisions to count the credits generated by biochar production and application. So, but if you look at biochar potential, there we see India like in just like the second one. So fourth in terms of biochar potential after China, US and Brazil. So India has a fourth number of huge biochar potential for getting CO2 credits. So what are we doing exactly in that direction? That's the last slide. So we have this Ministry of Power and Bureau of Energy Efficiency. They are going to be responsible for setting up this national carbon market. So India is planning to set up or establish the national carbon market, which will look into this whole carbon credit thing, and biochar will also be one of the components of it. Then there will be other components like direct air capture, renewables, mainly solar and wind, because that's where India has invested heavily, and we claim to green greener, to make our grid greener. And then we have Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change, who will oversee these climate-related policies and international carbon credit mechanisms. And CERC, the Central Electricity Regulating Commission, they will see the energy-related carbon credits. Okay, so energy-related carbon credits, environment-related carbon credits. So we have, because power and energy is a very big sector, and there are multiple ministries involved in energy and power domain. So we have separate ministries to look after it. So the key developments so far by like February 2025. So there are talks of establishing a comprehensive national carbon market in India, and once that is established, there are efforts on like streamlining certification and standardization methods. obviously will take some motivation from the globally established standards like Vera and Gold Standard, or like CDM, which is I think which was brought to the world under Kyoto Protocol. And even in Kyoto Protocol, you'll be surprised to know like one of the highest carbon credit dealer was India, not the one which bought but which sold. So most of the companies emitting heavily in developed nations, they bought like carbon credits from India under CDM of Kyoto Protocol also. Then pioneering projects and corporate engagements. There has been news since October on this particular company called Varaha, which has partnered with Euro.Gov to set up their own carbon credit mechanism. And recently in January 2025, I think Google signed a deal with them to purchase 0.1 million tons, 0.1 million CO2 credits. So it's good that private and international organizations and companies are coming up and collaborating with Indian companies who want to work in the carbon credit domain. And then there are collaborations, like again between companies and policy making organizations or the sectors like agriculture, horticulture, aquaculture. These are the sectors which are going to contribute significantly to carbon credits, which can be available for sale in international market. And some like these organizations like Servonomy, they are being like collaborating with them. These are all the key developments which are in the positive direction, which is like, showing that India is serious on the mechanisms of ESG, of which carbon credit is going to be an inseparable part. And Biochar can play a small but important role in that, because it is one thing which is related to the major percentage of population in India which stays in rural part, like 60 to 65% people in rural area where community is mainly farming based and moving around this agriculture. So it will be an interesting thing to look at. With this, I close my talk. Thank you. I'm open for they keep listening to me every time.
Okay, Dr. Sonal, thank you very much for your presentation. And first thing first, I must compliment your Abdul for doing very nice work. And I have some queries on Abdul's part, not the other one. So first one, if I understood it correctly, you have done some field works in 2-3 places probably. The first query is that you experimented in the area in the forest where you use the different silvicultural system of management of forest in timber removal.
Yeah.
In those areas you have done something.
Yes, sir.
So my query is where did you find these type of silvicultural system?
Whether they are going to go forward with it.
So that has not been done in India.
No, that's for California.
That was
the forest part was for, that is the project 2. The project 1 was done in India.
So I was little bit worried because we are not following those silvicultural systems in most of the forest in India. At least Uttarakhand or UP.
Okay, are you talking about this, the clear cut variable retention?
Fine, now it's okay. I was thinking that you have done something here.
No, that's the second project was in US.
See, no? Query number 2. You said that you brought soil from Haryana and did some experiment. Why you chose Haryana, and will that thing will be applicable in other areas also? Because Haryana soil is entirely different from probably UP soil or Bihar soil or some other areas.
Again, it depends on like when we write a proposal to a funding agency. Before doing our work, we have to list on our objectives very specifically. And the question they ask us like, where will you do this and why? So if I say we will do it in Uttarakhand, the first question was it's near Ganga and you already have very fertile alluvial soil, what your biochar is going to do there? And so to avoid that, like to have clear justification, since Haryana and Punjab they have been burning that residue. So we thought of because we are going to use their residue, the paddy straw, it's better to use it in the same fields to avoid the long distance transportation cost. And the one idea behind this was, one reason behind this was like biochar made from one kind of biomass or one kind of crops residue can provide, there is a high chance of providing the required nutrients to the same plant if it is going to be grown in the same soil. Means I'm saying like biomass made from rice crop residue will have got those nutrients which are required for rice crop, because they were the nutrients which were given to that rice crop while it was growing in the same field. That was the another motivation.
Okay, government wanted you to solve the problem of
Paddy
Haryana
crop.
first,
Yeah.
and then rest of the area later.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then what the trends of results were similar for the field trial in Roorkee when we did.
Okay.
Okay, we got soil from Haryana, did test in our lab, and then we did field trials in Haryana. But in the parallel, we repeated the same study with soil in Roorkee. So the improvement that we observed for Haryana part, or let's say if it was 5% improvement in yield, for Roorkee we got 1% improvement in yield. But the composition, the 25% reduction in fertilizer and 1% application rate was common. Obviously we did not test it for, if I go for like say 1.5 or 1.6%, maybe something else would do better, but amongst the 3 application rates that we chose, 1, 3 and 5, 1% worked better for all 3 types of experiments in 2 different states.
Okay, fine. The third one is you taught something about you. Thank you so much. Nice presentation and
It was indeed a very nice presentation. Thank you, Dr. Sonal.
Sorry.
Professor Sonal.
Nice, okay. Even Sonal is fine.
So the question is regarding that 1% and 25%. 1% of biochar will give 25%.
No, 1% of biochar will reduce.
Cost benefit economics, as in 1% of biochar,
Yeah.
the price or the.
Now with 1% biochar,
Let's say 1 acre of land.
Yeah.
So in that case, what will be the fertilizer requirement? Normal, I think.
300
so
kg.
Yeah, okay.
So let's say like 300 kg of, requirement is there, and like 1% of the soil mass we calculate. So let's say like for 300 kg like fertilizer, if we are using say 30 like 30 kg, or maybe I think Abdul, there is 50 kg, 30 kg, let's say 30 kg biochar, because we are not considering remaining would be the mass of soil. Let's do mass of fertilizer to mass of biochar, 1:10.
Yeah.
So now, what we said, like if we put 30 kg biochar or 300 kg fertilizer, we reduce 25% of 300 kg. So if the reduction is say like 75 kg, so if 30 kg biochar cost is less than that 75 kg subsidized fertilizer, the subsidized chemical fertilizer cost which farmer has to pay, then it's a win-win situation. For farmer, they don't need to pay extra, and they are getting the same yield as the 100%, the 300 kg fertilizer rate, and the safety of their soils is little better, So that's the way we look at it. Also, the other cost which turned out to be a profit making, that the reduction in 10% irrigation requirement. So that's some, it's a very small amount,
Yeah,
but that's some electricity price. So these 2 savings, if they are exceeding the cost of making biochar or like buying biochar, I think farmers will be ready to do that, provided they get the same yield as the 100% fertilizer.
Great. And they don't have to do this every year, or will stay for next 5 years? 10 years?
We haven't done the study, but based on the literature, I can comment on that. So, if
Or it's a one-time expense for next 5 years, that biochar?
no, there will be annual 2 or 3 kg will do. So it's just like someone was talking about the volatile matter content in the soil, or during tilling process, if there are some losses, because like we are talking about, if we are talking about food grains like rice and wheat, so it will be mostly on the surface, like maybe 6 inch below the soil. So if you till it, it will come on the surface and have that albedo effect for sure. But if you are talking about like tall trees which go into deep, like in urban plantations, where you dig a hole or you dig a circumference based hole, and there you put biochar. So in that, one time would be enough. But for the applications where biochar comes on the surface every time during tilling, there subsequent years we will need to add that incremental biochar, but not the same amount. It will go on reducing each year.
Yeah. And the next question is to everyone from the team from France also. I don't know if we have carried out any experiments on using biochar on saline land, on desert or barren lands, the impact, and if it can change the land fertility.
So this study which I showed, this particular study, the first we did, but we referred to the studies which were carried out in the southern part of California, which is more like a desert, because California has both the issues, droughts as well as floods, and then there are some fires also. So in the southern part of California, so we proposed the hypothetical scenario, all the surplus biomass in that state, if we convert to biochar based on annual availability, if we have to use the entire biochar within the same state, where and how we are going to use it. So one example was, let's put it in the soil all over, wherever it is available and required. So in that, I remember we took some permeance factors and references where there were some studies where biochar was used in barren land. So if you go through my paper, in the list of the references of that paper, you will definitely find those studies which have used biochar on the barren land.
So that is successful.
It's a pilot scale study, a small scale study for 1 year. So,
and how much you are supposed to use, let's say for 1 acre of land? I mean, are you supposed to dig 1 meter or let's say 1 feet of?
So I think for this I would request to go through United Nations CTCN website. So there is, I don't know the full form, Climate Technology Network something. So CTCN has given applications like biochar application guidelines. Depending on whether the plants have long roots, short roots, or it's like it grows like grasses and herbs, there are different ways to apply biochar, and they have given those guidelines based on all the literature studies available all over the world. Like one study in Japan, they said like they got very good quality rose, the color and the size of the roses were increased when they put biochar in around the circumference, like say 2 feet far from the rose stem. And when they did the same study by putting biochar right into the hole where stem was inserted, they did not get the same effect. So there are guidelines depending on the type of plant we want to grow, and it's a very good website, and it's very in very simple words, like when we buy like topsoil from market, it's written like instructions to use. So it's like that. It's not like a highly like research or technical document.
At one point you mentioned it's 9 tons per hectare. This is the
for that one. So 2 to 9 tons per hectare. So for per acre, you can just divide it by 2.96.
Alright, thank you.
Haryana की soil जो है वो sorry, you brought Haryana soil, no?
Yes, Roorkee.
So what is the like salinity condition in that soil?
The pH was around 6.7.
6 points, so
Okay.
not very much.
Yeah. So when we added biochar, it went to 6.9. Okay. But for the samples where we did not add biochar, the controls, as the plant was growing, it went from 6.7 to 6.75. It increased towards the growth of like end of harvest season for rice crop.
Soil was improved on.
I'm not sure whether I can comment whether the soil was improved, but the growth of plant in soil does change the pH of soil, because based on what nutrients plant's roots takes from soil, the soil's pH is likely to change over a period of 6 months or the complete harvest. So when we add external amendments, that change would be little more drastic and faster. But even without any amendment, the pH of soil keeps on changing as the plant and trees grow throughout their life cycle. Because it's like I see it like while plant is growing, the roots are continuously taking some nutrients. So the flow of those nutrients are going to affect the soil pH slightly. not more than 0.5 euro.
Sir, I have a question. I am doing research on biochar since 5 years in the same plot in our campus, especially soybean wheat cropping sequence.
Using the cotton biochar, right?
Using cotton biochar.
Yeah.
So I found that I have different doses I planned, starting from 3 tons per hectare, 5, 7, 9, up to 15 tons. So my study indicates that if you use, and western countrysides they use 50 tons per hectare. So if you go above 10 tons, so slowly start reducing it. What may be the chemical science behind this? Do you have any?
From chemistry point of view, it's difficult to answer, but someone from botany or microbiology or soil expert would be able to answer this better. But you said like, but one thing is like when you excessively increase the biochar in soil, you said you did it for which plant?
So soybean wheat crop.
So I think soybean is like a stem-like plant.
It is a leguminous crop.
Yeah, and it goes up to I guess 1.5 feet into the ground.
Yeah.
And your biochar was on the surface
No, I am mixing that biochar.
in the soil.
Yeah, I am spreading that biochar before sowing the seeds and mix it and sow the seeds. So that's how I am doing. And the thing is that if you use higher dose, that is the problem. And also I am doing a nutrient uptake study in all the cropping sequence. So uptake is increased in 3 tons and 5 tons. Uptake of NPK in the plant body, it is increased and decreased after 10. That's why the yield is reducing. That is the interpretation I am putting. But what really making that biochar not to help for the plant as it increases its quantity in the soil? That I am not understanding. I hope.
Even I am not sure about this, like why, like yeah, on one side if you increase biochar, porosity increases, microbial activity should increase, nutrient retention, water retention should increase, and the availability should also increase. But one possible reason may be like if we have like excessive carbon in the soil along with other nutrients, and we are watering that plant continuously, so that like the excess carbon can also block the release of nutrients.
Yeah.
And the pores, like if there are excessive pores coming together, there is a probability of breakage of those pores and what the
Even
purpose
same review paper tells because of calcium. So it enters the pores and it blocks
It blocks, yeah,
the
so-
pores. Because of the nutrient absorption capacity will get decreased,
Yeah.
and so that.
So that's just my guess based on, but I think a microbiologist would be able to answer it better.
Thank you for talking about carbon markets. So I see that things are, well, the way you're seeing this carbon legislation in India, I think it would be good to exchange with the international network that we have, because I think the experience we have in Europe, especially in biochar, could be really helpful for what you want to do. This is the way that we wanted to have it, having those experts from the States and from CEFIPRA as well. So I think that international discussion will really help having this be put in place much quicker than if you are working on your own. And on the slide that you showed, well, at the end you mentioned a purer earth as a, but it's not mentioned before in the other slide. So I think that this has to be updated all the time.
Yes.
And concerning Vera and Gold Standard, well, there has been a number of publications, so they have been attacked a lot. So I think that this is why we really have to have a very scientific view on how to influence policymakers to define those standards. So I think this is key, and we should work together on that.
Yes, definitely. So I think that was the intention behind this whole symposium, to get speakers and policymakers and industrialists together and discuss and deliberate on this topic. And whenever like India like enrolls its policy, I think it will be available in the public domain, because a lot of inspirations have been drawn from EBC, USPI and IBI while preparing this draft policy, particularly for biochar component in the entire carbon credit policy. But like I said, the first point of interest will be on the sector which is emitting heavily. And in India, it's the power sector, followed by the heavy industry sector like steel industry and cement. So I think those will be the ones who would be made to obey those compliances first, and then it will come to the agriculture sector and all. But still, like this biochar, even though it has like lowest value of carbon credit at present, and there are many difficulties in conducting life cycle and estimating the accurate value of credit and share for each stakeholder. So, but I think whenever it happens, it will be rolled out in open for everyone to give their inputs, and it will keep evolving. Like I said, it will not, it's just like EBC and IBI guidelines are also getting evolved every year. So this will also keep evolving.
So thank you. I think that you can conclude this session. Okay for you.
Long live India and France friendship.